The Nice House on the Lake, issue 2, James Tynion the fourth, and Alvaro Martinez, of course, on the art.
On issue 3, not issue 2.
Oh, I didn't change the number on my list. That's my bad. So yeah, issue 3, which is focusing on Sam, who is one of the gay couple, one of the two characters in the gay couple, and this is very much about kind of him trying to, like, everyone else is almost like immediately like, well, we should just watch a movie, like relax for a couple of days and like get calm and get used to the situation. And he's like, no, let's go and like find the perimeter. Let's go do things. Let's try and solve this. This is horrible. And it sort of like sets up that he's that type of character that he never takes days off, he never takes time off, because we get the transcript of the phone call where he was like convinced to come on this trip in the first place from Walter.
So he hasn't taken like proper vacation in years anyway.
Yeah, he's always about the work. So yeah, it's a really good character study issue, as they've been so far. Typically, they've all focused on, you know, a solo character more or less. This one gets trippy with the, I don't like to say Lovecraftian, it's not quite right, but the existential like space horror of what are these weird monolithic things and what is this place that he finds at the end and the secrets within, like
the way it's laid out. Oh man, it's the hexagon. I think it's laid out in it. It's like super interesting. Like, it seems very intentional.
Yeah, and Sam, you know, he kind of has this realization as he's telling the story, sort of in this like future start that they've all kind of started in, where he's rowing the boat and he's talking about how he hadn't really made any friends that first year he was in college, and it was actually Walter who told him to go and like spy on some friends from high school because he was worried about them. But he's kind of realizing in hindsight that what he was actually doing was making him interact with his friends again, so that he would like sort of just improve his social life and get back onto like a less lonely path. Yeah. And he's sort of realizing that even though, like, you know, on its own it's actually a very pleasant, sneaky gesture in a way, but obviously given everything else Walter's doing, it's got a sinister undertone to it. But you know, even at the start of the issue, you know, his partner wakes up and he's already sitting up looking out the window, like, you know, he's not sleeping, he's not resting, he doesn't vacate. So they're debating what movies to watch. You know, Disney shit or otherwise.
Something nice.
Something nice. And he's like, no, let's not watch something nice. Let's try and solve our problems. He obviously, there's a great moment here actually where there's a close up in his hands, and his partner kind of leans in and like says don't, and sort of, because you can sort of tell he's like gripping the chair and he's like getting ready to unleash on the group, but he goes off instead. He does have a passing moment with assume that's the artist. Again, it's hard to keep track of all these characters.
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of have this brief moment because they don't really know each other very well. They've met like once before, which she brings up here, is that they had that one interaction before they came to the house. But he starts trying to find a perimeter, so we get this kind of effect where he's like touching like the invisible wall, and there's like ripples as if there's a barrier, and he says it stings a little bit.
He gets a stick and just like, all right, let's walk along it.
Yeah, it's simple stuff. It's simple. You know, I mean, I actually just watched the Lost like pilot again in the last week, but the idea being is that this was kind of making me think of that a little bit, and that you've got this ensemble of characters, and you've got someone who's a bit more of a thinker who's starting to like trying to map out where they are and what they can do, what the plan is, and that kind of stuff. And he's just walking along with a stick, and we see like, you know, the shadow of Walter kind of watching him from the trees. Very creepy.
Every so often, it looks so creepy the way that the art does it, because it's just like a silhouette, and you know the glasses just stick out, and oh man, it looks great.
And it's funny, and I don't think anything sort of like shows how different he is to everyone else when it just cuts back to them for one panel as he's doing this, and they're all on the boat just drinking and swimming, and you know, whatever. They're just doing normal things. I do like the small touch though that his partner is looking off. Like everyone else, like, you know, the artist is just sort of looking down at the paper. Everyone else is doing their own thing, but his partner,
he's staring off back towards the shore.
Yeah, so he's clearly thinking about him. He's thinking about Sam, and he's thinking about, you know, is he okay? Should I go and after him, kind of thing. And I actually love this beat where he like sort of hits a right angle, because he's like dragging the stick along the perimeter, and he's
seen another statue that he's walking towards.
Yeah, a different symbol, but equally like weird and hard to, you know, decipher.
I'm wondering how these symbols relate to the character symbols. because I'm sure they do somehow.
But he's dragging the stick along, and he just walks into this other side. Like, his entire face hits it, and he's like, "Shit!" So he's like, and I love the best panel like possible to just really cement what he's just done is that one where he's actually dragged the stick across the corner, and you just see the sort of the right angle.
Yeah,
it's not really, because it's more of a hexagon when we see what the overall shape is, but like close enough. The idea being it's a sharp turn.
Yeah. Like I say, he stops and stares at it, and then grabs the twig that he's got and just kind of brushes round. Like, right, okay, there it is.
So really neat, and he's back that day, and he's like, "Hey, I'm taking your shoes, because I need good hiking shoes to continue my mapping." And it's a little bit cold because they've been a little bit cold to each other. He's like, "Oh, you can borrow my shoes since you've asked," kind of thing. But again, he wants to go off and do this. He offers to come with them. He's like, "No, you stay here. You stay here and watch movies, and you stay here and eat the food that we don't even know if we will get more." Obviously, it was hinted at by Walter that there'd somehow keep being more food, but obviously, it makes sense that he wouldn't just believe that. Like why would he? Until more food starts to magically appear. But this book's been not afraid to do those pages where it's like a different style, and here we get the sort of the journal where he's like mapping and like writing down his notes of like.
A double page and then a full page after that as well.
I love that he actually asked something that I was thinking, because as he was saying that he's finding more of these symbols and statues, I was actually thinking on this 2-page, like, do you see anything when you touch? Because we know when they touch the main one, like they see where they're from and all the dead bodies and stuff like that, and I was like, I almost wanted to high five Tynion, because the very first thing he says in the next page is no visions touching the sculptures. I'm like, you answered my question. Like, I had that question in my head that entire 2 pages, and then I turned to this page.
And then I'm like, okay, so what's the purpose of the other ones? Because we know there's one here, it says there's a sculpture tunnel that when you walk in it cancels out all noise.
I suspect that all these symbols around the perimeter are the things that are actually making the barrier. That would be my first guess.
It's possible that it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But then there's ones inside the barrier as well, right? That we know of. So if they don't do visions, because the ones that he can touch must be inside the barrier. So they must do something. I'm sure they do something, right?
Well, I think they're all inside the barrier, because even the ones around the perimeter are inside the wall.
Oh, maybe that one is. I can't remember it. Fair enough.
So, but he finds this staircase that has tons of symbols up the side of it, and the visual at the top is, because it's very Monolith from 2001, but it's not obviously just a rectangle. It's more of a weird building structure, but it's pure black, and you've got these. It
reminds me of something there's a game that I played. I can't remember what the game is. It's very specific though, where you have to go and like investigate structures like this. And so there's a way. So it might be Mass Effect Andromeda actually.
Oh, interesting. But you've got the difference though, because the symbols that are around it, because there's like a courtyard of more of these symbols and statues, and they're all white. So you have got this like real contrast of this jet black building that's like a weird cuboid shape with, when I say weird cuboid, what I mean is it's like multiple cubes all kind of like together rather than just one shape. And so he looks through this, and he kind of notices on the 2-page spread that they're in the middle of this courtyard. There appears to be like a model of like, well, not even model, but just like a map of the lake and like where the house is. So clearly, you would imagine that all these symbols in this courtyard in this hexagonal pattern around the lake might correlate to what he was finding around the perimeter, like all those shapes. Like maybe the ones in this courtyard correlate to the ones that are out there next to the walls.
Quite possibly. What's interesting to me about this, though, is it's split up into layers. Like there's a first hexagon around the lake, but then there's maybe 4 or 5 more as it goes out in layers. And I'm wondering, has he only just been walking around that first barrier? Like is that first hexagon just the first barrier?
If that is true, then these won't correlate to the ones he was finding, because then he's not moved beyond this first hexagon.
Yeah.
Which would then make you question, what do these other chunks and sections that are all split up mean? Like, do they represent other parts of the planet that are being used for other experiments, or other people, or other things?
Yeah, where the lines join to the next section, is that where there's essentially a gateway that you can get through, perhaps?
Yeah, well, that's all very interesting stuff. Like I think the last chunk of this issue really built the mystery really well. And you have this moment where he goes up to the wall and he starts yelling for Walter. I know you're in there. I wish I hadn't come. You knew I wouldn't have come if you hadn't begged me. Why did I'd rather be dead without there with everyone else than sort of live like this, not knowing. And he breaks down in tears. And he fires, because he mentioned earlier on that he was taking a flare gun in case he got into trouble. So he fires off the flare, which is a gorgeous panel, by the way.
Colouring change as well. So we start like in this blood red on the 2-page spread before, and over the course of that page, it kind of transitions over to a cold blue, and then the flare sticks back out again with its bright red.
Yeah. So he fires that off. Gorgeous panel. He walks away, and then we see sort of Walter kind of appear behind him again in shadow and silhouette. And then we get this creepy moment. So earlier on in the issue, because we know that there was other characters that Walter wanted to bring but couldn't, right? Who never agreed to come for whatever reason. And it was mentioned in the phone call earlier on that Sam asked, "Is Reg coming?" And Reg was the one as well that he was meant to go and see if he was okay back in the college days.
Yeah.
And Walter turns back and looks at the wall of this structure, and we see from inside this structure, Reg banging against the window saying, "Sam, can you hear me? It's Reg, can you hear me?" And Walter just creepily smiles. So the idea is that the entire time that Sam was there crying and breaking down, his old friend Reg is trapped in there in a more literal prison than everyone else, because he's in this weird cuboid shape.
And it's it's still face melted Walter as well.
Yes.
Like that weird version, which doesn't show in the silhouettes. He looks normal in the silhouettes. Like the shape of his head looks normal, whereas you see it here and there's clearly like almost 2 heads, right?
Yeah.
So it adds to this creepy effect.
Yeah, and the final page is just like them coming up in the little boat to get him, and one of them says, "You're lucky we were outside to see the flare," and his partner says, No, I would have stayed out and looked for it, if no one else was out. Again, this idea that he's going to be here for them no matter what, even if they are different in a lot of ways. And he just says, "I found all I was going to find, let's go home." And the idea of him referring to it as home, I think, is him being broken. Like, he's now accepted that this is home. And he's been disillusioned. It's so mysterious, it's so otherworldly, he can't comprehend it. He's accepted that he can't solve this, and that's him being broken. So I think it's a really good. I think this is my favorite issue of the 3. I think it's so focused and it's so well put together, and it builds the mystery so well with this last section of the building and the stairway and all the symbols. But it also, because it separates him from everyone else, some of that character confusion of all the different characters mingling wasn't a problem.
I left it a little bit more focused. I agree with that. I think I preferred the first issue still. I think that was just sublime for me. Because that had it was mostly focused on the one character still, but managed to introduce a lot. And I don't know, just that was like a masterclass of a first issue. I think this is better than the second issue though. I do think it's the way it builds. I think that back 4 or 5 pages is just incredible. That art on the last page, it's a simple little thing, but I love the glow of the green. It's just at the side of the panel on whoever's driving the boat from the screens. I just really like that. Yeah. It's just a nice little contrast to the rest of the coloring. Yeah, it's real nice. I dig it. So no, it's really good. So yeah, what are you giving issue 3 of Nice House on the Lake? I'm giving 8.5. Yeah, straight 9 for me, I think. And I said I think it's my favorite issue. If you go back and check my rating for issue 1, maybe it was higher than that. I can't remember, but that's a 9. It might have been, because I think me and Matt gave it, or I gave it 10s, and I feel like you gave it a 9.5, maybe. I might have done. Maybe I should give it a 9.5. You know what? You convinced me. 9.5. So 9.5 out of 10 for Nice House on the Lake issue 3. That was a phenomenal issue.